a lot of people regret their choices because they still have that nagging feeling things could have been better maybe.
Yeah.
Probably why so many people have coaches is to get the opinion of a person that has zero stakes in the decision making.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anything to lose.
Let's say you're an HR director and you're opening up a new position and you have a lot of great candidates that would match that position. How do you now make sure that you're choosing the right talent for your team?
Paradox of choice is that, of course, having choice is infinitely better than having no choice.
Yeah.
But from that, it doesn't follow that having an enormous amount of choice is better than some choice. Because what happens?
Hi everyone and welcome to the Neurolympics Podcast, brought to you by Brains First, the company that helps you make better talent decisions powered by neuroscience. I'm Lucy, I'm the host of the Neurolympics Podcast, and today we're going to speak about the topic that we're all familiar with, that we all do it on a daily basis, and that's decision making. Actually, we make about 35,000 decisions on average on a daily basis, which is quite striking. And I'm super excited to speak with the decision-making expert on this episode, Andries van der Leij. You know him from previous episodes, but Andries, this is really a topic I think that you have tremendous expertise in. You've done a couple of scientific research in the field, also at the University of Amsterdam on a daily basis. At Brains First, you attempt to improve decision-making in the talent management and talent identification field. And with Neurolympics, you look at neuromarketing, which has also a lot to do with decision-making and all the factors that influence it. So super happy and excited to speak with you about this topic.
Thank you. It's a great topic.
It definitely is. So maybe we can start off with why are you so enthusiastic about decision-making?
Well, to be honest, I have become increasingly intrigued by decision making because I'm not very good at it. So I tend to over focus on all the elements that are relevant for decisions and go back and forth between reasoning. I excel almost everything. Every decision I make, I try to have total control to reach the most perfect decision ever made. And that made me become intrigued by actually what decision making is, how it works in the brain, why it's so hard to do, why it consumes so much energy, and also try to find out what kind of things are actually influencing your decisions to improve it.
Yeah.
But it's also indeed, like I said, very personal for me because decision making is something I do a lot, like anyone.
Yeah.
But I maybe also over-invest in when it comes to time and resources.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually, I agree on you on the decision-making is hard part. I also don't like making decisions as much. I think many of us don't, especially in the times of choice overload.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the big topics, let's start with a little warm-up to get the brain cells going and to ease you into the episode. So we're going to start with a very personal question. What is one of the best decisions you've ever made in your life and why?
I think actually my best decision was, to be honest, a non-decision, which was basically choosing my better half, which was already very, very long ago, and I was very young, and also it wasn't really conscious or calculated, and definitely not excelled. However, it has proven out to be a very, very good choice, not only since she completes me, but also because she helps me make decisions. So, for instance, one thing that she did pretty early on was basically I was working in IT, basically encouraging me to study, to start studying and to study neuroscience. And that I did. And I was pretty practical at the time, and I thought I'm doing cool stuff. But she was right. I was just so information hungry that I really loved it. And well, here we are.
Here we are. Thanks to your better half.
Yeah.
This was a really good move.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Very sweet that you chose this topic. But let's start with a very generic question. How does the brain actually handle decision making? And maybe we can also differentiate between more simple and more complex decisions.
Yeah. So the brain uses, like we covered in the previous episode, a lot of different components in order to reach a decision. But in decision science or neuroscience, there is a distinction between simple choice.
Mm-hmm.
The simplest of choices, for instance, choosing between a chocolate and a vanilla ice cream.
Which one would you go for?
I invariably go for chocolate because I'm more in the dark side of things, like coffee, etc. But so for me, that's also a very simple choice. But there's just two options, and one variable, one attribute where it differs, right? It's the taste or the flavor. But most decisions are what we call multi-attribute decision problems, where you have most of the time not two but more options, and then they also vary or are different on different levels or attributes.
Yeah.
And that's not even for very, very complex choices, for instance, by choosing who to hire, but also I don't know, in consumer choice, choosing a phone, or a holiday destination,
or in the supermarket,
in the supermarket. And what the brain does is it's best at comparing two things. But if you have three options and five attributes, for instance, I don't know, with a phone, screen size, I don't know, reception, etc., what you do is you start comparing two things and you go back and forth over the choice options, but also over the attributes. And that makes, you can even see that in eye tracking, when you go over an Excel list, you go everywhere. And that it's very, very hard to do that. You can't really do that well in parallel. So at the same time.
Yeah.
So those kinds of decisions take time. Some people take more time, like me. Some people are just very intuitive. And basically what you have to do in that sense is two things. You have to define the attributes which are important. For instance, I don't know, screen size is very important, but looks not so much.
Yeah.
And then you also have to weigh them, right? How much more important is a good screen than more storage for you?
Yeah.
And that is very, very, very hard, and also very susceptible for things like framing and influence. And that's what you see in the supermarket.
Yeah.
Where you just
overload of choice. Yeah.
So that's very hard. Even shopping is for the brain pretty hard, because either you have fixed brands and you just go. But if you really start contemplating, for instance, this decision space, even in canned tomatoes or bottled water. Yeah, these kinds of things. There's so many options and so many very bottle shape, bottle form, taste, package size, etc. It is pretty hard. Yeah. So therefore, often you either choose for the things that you already chose, or some other things, price, whatever. But if we wouldn't do that, we would spend days even with a weekly grocery list, of course. Yeah. We can't really do it that well.
Crazy. And I mean, we're speaking about like what we would probably experience as very simple life decisions, right? Going to the supermarket is something that we just cramp into our day after a long work day before we go doing sports, meeting with friends. Yeah. However, it already consumes a lot of our brain's energy, right? Yeah. So now let's go over to these maybe some case scenarios of really, really complex decisions, and also dive into a little bit of the factors that influence the decision making. So let's start maybe with the first case. Let's say you're an HR director and you're opening up a new position, and you have a lot of great candidates that would match that position. Yeah. How do you now make sure that you're choosing the right talent for your team?
Yeah, so as I explained, even choosing the chocolate is for the brain pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to decide or sort of make a sort of framework on what would lead to an optimal decision. So weigh the attributes, I don't know, taste, size, package size, etc., and the different options, and start to comparing those.
Yeah.
But with people, it's way different because the outcome of a decision in chocolate, for instance, or even water or whatever, is pretty clear. You taste it, and then you know if the decision was okay. In HR, it's way different. Usually, the person that does the assessments of the candidates, so assessing and comparing all these different attributes, which are also there, CV, motivation letter, maybe some tests, etc., have to be weighed. But they also, most of the time, the people deciding on these factors do not have a full picture about the irrelevance because they themselves do not do the work.
Yeah.
So they have to learn that from other people, and the reward, knowing that person was right, is very, very much delayed in HR because maybe a year after or 2 years after if the decision was right. So it's also very hard to learn while doing it how good your decision making is.
Yeah, because it's really like a long-term investment, right?
Of course.
Ideally also you want the person to develop. The person isn't ready for the position in the beginning. It's
indeed. Let's say you hire a trainee. So basically what you do is you try to make an investment decision. What person has the right qualities, so that after a year of developing and training and on the job will become a good employee.
Yeah.
But that's very hard because the information that you have doesn't say that much about whether that investment will be right. And the feedback is also very, very much delayed. So maybe a year later, you think, okay, I shouldn't mind this. This experience is actually not that relevant because the people that had it were not better than the people that didn't have. And that makes it very hard.
Yeah.
Of course, also the information that you use is vastly different. It's how do you compare a good impression on an interview to some sort of hard experience that is on a CV?
Yeah,
it's not there. Then there's also a lot of bias there, of course, because the impression itself is influenced, for instance, by recognizing yourself in the other person, and the CV has things that you recognize or find relevant but aren't really. And you also have to put all of these things in one sort of decision space. That makes HR extremely difficult.
Yeah, because what you're touching upon now with recognizing ourselves in the other person is called the familiarity effect, right? That we just tend to automatically like people from a fairly similar background that look a bit the same, from the same cultural background, ethnic background. We just automatically attach some more likability to that.
We know these examples, right? So a structured interview mitigates that a bit, but it's the bad example is you read a CV and you see, oh, I see you did rowing as a student. I also rowed. Then you talk about that for 15 minutes, and that sort of makes that you resonate. You connect on that. That leads to some sort of positive emotions, and then you have a good impression on the candidate. But is it relevant for the job?
Exactly. And now you say also you have a good impression of the candidate. I mean, ultimately you have to rely on first impressions because you cannot follow a candidate for 2 weeks, and the brain attaches a high relevance to first impression, right? You tend to this also called halo effect.
Indeed. So that's something that's very good or bad, by the way, that sort of can halo. And then you see, oh, actually that experience is pretty good, but actually that was the effect of that very positive emotional buzz you had by bonding over rowing, for instance. And that is all very human. It is not. It's not I don't mean it as to say that we are that's bad. It's just very human, and we are collectively pretty incapable of doing these kinds of decisions. So how do you mitigate that? Actually, it's the same with all kinds of decisions. You try to objectify the information that you have to come to independent, unbiased sources of information that tell you something, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's choosing a bottle of wine on rating stars, or I don't know, being in a group and judging the same person and then independently scoring that person according to some mechanism, it's all efforts to try to objectify the information, you get the bias a little bit out and do it better.
Yeah. And I think maybe this is a good moment to also briefly touch upon what we do with Brains First. It just obviously nicely ties in.
Yeah, of course. Basically what we do, we have a pre-assessment or a cognitive insights platform. But what we actually do as a solution, we have a decision support solution. We help you making decisions, from assessments to talent insights to career development, by giving independent, objective information. This person has not the talent right now, not the experience right now, which you can see on a CV, but the talent to develop into what you want.
I love
so
that.
Back to the example of a trainee. We can say something about this person needs to become very good at client processes. There's no real experience. They just came out of university, right? But we can say something about the innate talents to develop these things while learning on the job. And that gives you a little bit of grip, a little bit of information on the predictive validity of your decision. So person A, person B, what are the chances that this person, after a year of investment or 2 years of investment from both sides, also the candidate, will become a good employee or a very productive or a happy employee, because most of the times these things go hand in hand.
I love that, because then you ultimately don't put a limit on a person. You look at the talent of who someone can become, like more the potential, instead of, okay, this is who the person is right now.
Indeed.
And I love that, because I don't think we do that a lot in our society.
Well, not enough.
Not enough.
The behavior is the same. So a lot of these companies have traineeships or starter position, and they already accept they will not be productive in 1 week. And if you have a job that you can really quantify the productivity within a week and assess that, then a test like ours has limited added value. But a lot of companies accept that they have traineeships and starter positions, and that productivity will rise up to good levels in even a year. But that means that you take different decisions. You take investment decisions about what people can become. But the recruitment itself is not really tuned to that yet. It's still old school, basically, on hard credentials, hard skills, and schooling, etc. But that's limited in this world, because everything is changing so fast, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're making a great example with the work at Brains First. And let's go on to the second case scenario. Let's say you're young and maybe also privileged young person, and now you have to choose for which studies to pursue. Let's investigate this case scenario, especially in the light of choice overload, the paradox of choice overload.
So there's this problem, a privilege problem, like you say, which was touched upon by Barry Schwartz in a fantastic book. It's called The Paradox of Choice. And he basically says we now have the luxury to have almost infinite choice possibilities in anything, whether you choose a phone or a stereo or a holiday destination or whatever, if you have the luxury to do so. It also goes for studies. So you used to just study basically what your parents did or the teacher advised you to do, or what was just nearby.
Yeah.
But now, for instance, choosing a master's degree, you can go in the Netherlands alone. You have, I don't even know, but hundreds probably.
Yeah.
But you can also go abroad. You can do anything, which makes the decision very, very hard. And but what Barry Schwartz says is the paradox of choice is that, of course, having choice is infinitely better than having no choice.
Yeah.
But from that, it doesn't follow that having a lot of choice, an enormous amount of choice, is better than some choice. Because what happens? You just don't know what to do. You just don't know what to choose. So it goes like this. I can go in my city. I can do this study. I can do that study. But I can also go to another city. I can go to another country. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. What will I do? Do I do this study, or should I contemplate going to Germany? I will hop on to Germany. Okay, this looks very good. But is it better? But then I will lose my friends. And that's this multi-attribute. You go back and forth. And a lot of young people struggle with it. And what they do is they buy time. So how do they buy time? They go on gap years. It's not to discover. It's my personal opinion that they say they want to discover themselves and see the world, but actually I think it's a decision postponing mechanism.
Yeah.
So you just postpone the decision, because what happens when they come back? They still don't know.
It's not that. It's not you come back. You're like, I have it all figured out. No. I know who I am. I know what I want to do. It's kind of you leave and you come back at the same point. you
go, and then you still have to choose, right? And there are probably a lot of examples where it doesn't work like that. Yeah. But the point being is that these decisions are very hard. Young people have the feeling that if they do not choose right, that we touched upon this earlier, that they will regret it a lot. Mm-hmm. So they have to do it just right. But of course, there are no perfect choices, and you just don't know. You don't know what will happen, right? Also, this is an investment decision. So how our games help a little bit with that is basically give you a sort of compass to narrow down your decision, because that's what decision support mechanisms do, right? You just narrow it down, and that will make not only the decision itself better. So for instance, you should really think about working with people, or you should really contemplate technical task-oriented jobs. And then you can still go you can develop into data science or development or analyst or whatever. There are a lot of jobs there.
Yeah.
However, the narrowing it down makes the decision better, and also, what Barry Schwartz says, the experience of the decision is also better. Because if you know that there are an infinite amount of choices and you really thought about them, a lot of people regret their choices because they still have that nagging feeling. Things could have been better, maybe.
Yeah.
If I would just have stayed in the Netherlands, then... If I would have contemplated going abroad, then etc., etc.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, a waste of energy, because ruminating on your decisions after you have made them and they're sort of irrevocable is a pure energy waste.
You're right. But it's so hard because I also do it all the time. Do you have a life hack of what we could do to let go of it? I feel like it's so hard to not regret.
Well, a lot of these things happen in our heads, right? So the first thing is just basically a very simple advice, just to talk about it, because a lot of people probably will say that doesn't make sense.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
This whole could have, would have, should have is a very personal kind of process, and if you just start sharing it, people say, "Oh, don't think it's not relevant, like it does, or it doesn't make sense." But actually, the best hack is to not have all these options, contemplate all these options in the first place.
Take away the choices.
If you take away the choices, there's less to regret. And that is a very paradoxical advice as well, but there is some truth in it. Because, for instance, I now apply it to simple things, like simple, meaningless things, because I never apply it myself, like I said, to meaningful things, because, like I said, I excel everything. I put everything in Excel.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Excel.
Everything.
I put everything in Excel. I like that. But for instance, just going for a 4-star movie without even reading what the genre or the synopsis is, because then you sort of crowdsourced, right? You crowdsourced the level, the quality, because a lot of people said it was okay, but there are zero expectations about content, and then you might be disappointed, but you might also have a pleasant surprise. And if you think about everything that could happen when you make the choice, most things will disappoint a bit.
Definitely. You put it on like a how do you say podest?
Yeah, you have a sort of a virtual expectation of what will happen, and then that level is so high that the reality only can disappoint.
Yeah.
A good example of that is you have now these movies with like destinations in the world, because everybody's traveling right now, right?
Yeah.
And you see this movie of some influencer somewhere in a, I don't know, waterfall in Bali, and then you see expectations, and then there's this solitude person, like completely alone, like you get the idea nobody has ever seen this space, and in reality there are 200 people waiting for that same spot to take their photograph. There's a kiosk nearby. there's trash everywhere. So
I have these two images in my mind.
But if you didn't have that if you haven't seen that video, you would walk by and you would see, oh, that is a fantastic waterfall, right?
Yeah,
I know you don't care about these other people.
No, definitely, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I love this, Andries. This is really good.
I'm not sure what the real advice here is. Just stop watching, but we won't do it. We want to have control, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes less is more.
Yeah. Amen to that. Let's move on to the third case scenario. Let's say you're a manager or a football coach and you have to make a very urgent, important, high-stake decision.
Yeah.
And you feel very stressed.
Yeah.
How are you going to make that decision?
Well, stress has this particular effect on decision making, which we call a gain or loss focus. This is actually Kahneman.
Okay.
So
Daniel Kahneman, very famous.
Yeah, it's very intriguing, very good, thick book. So, but it's a very good read. But basically, what he said was, if there's gain focus, you sort of are in a free world contemplating on what will I gain most with this decision. It's very free, and you focus on the expected rewards of a decision, right? Think of the ice cream again.
Yeah.
What will I like best?
Yeah.
But if you are under stress or there's very high stakes, you tend to focus on loss. So what choice will lead to the least or the lowest probability of damage or loss?
Mm-hmm.
So you're very defensive in your decision making.
Okay.
And if you apply it to football, for instance, it's pretty obvious. If you're 2-0 behind and it's the 80th minute, it doesn't make sense to start putting defenders in because it could be worse. So it's pretty obvious that you shouldn't do that. But more subtly, you should really try to decrease the focus on the what you might lose.
Yeah.
And think of what you might gain. And a very simple hack, therefore, is, which is probably why so many people have coaches, is to get the opinion of a person that has zero stakes in the decision making.
Yeah.
Because they don't have anything to lose.
No, it's true.
That's a very simple device. Like,
yeah.
Okay, I don't have anything to do. If I just look at the data, I would do this. But you're just so defensive that you could get information that takes everything over. That is not always, sometimes, but not always best for choice. And these effects are everywhere. You just see a simple example. You book an airline ticket, and in the last moment, they ask you for some insurance.
Oh yeah.
This is basically what happens with stakes. But this is a very simple, but you already can see that. Like, okay, you booked it. You're almost at the buy. It's a big decision. Buy now.
Yeah.
Hundreds of euros. And then they say, okay, for 20 euros more, if you happen to have a terrible accident, you can get your money back. And you just press yes, because you've shifted to loss prevention.
Yeah.
That's how fast and subtle it can be.
And they also present you with the worst case scenario, kind of inducing some sort of fear or something again in you to
and you did it yourself,
state,
because
right?
you're already at the if you're buying, then you're putting money in, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, I would like to go there, it's all positive.
Yeah.
But the buying itself does pain. So you're doing it yourself, and then they inject you with this.
Wow, this last little emotion. And I think talking about emotions, also what you said earlier with getting a coach, or maybe if you're in a high stake situation, I have to make a high stake decision, speaking with someone who's not so involved is also good on an emotional level, right? Because
absolutely,
all these emotions can really influence decision making in that moment. And since you have to make a quick and kind of intuitive decision where you cannot deliberately think about it, we do tend to rely also on our emotions.
And in that sense, if you phrase it like that, I think tests like ours actually act as a person like that, because it's objective information, right? It's, in the end, it's numbers and recommendations.
Yeah.
And then you just rely on something that is outside of the scope of stakes, outside of what can happen wrong. It's just the plain figures, and they can help you navigate these choices.
Yeah. Really good. Let's move on to the last case scenario. Let's say you've made a decision that feels wrong for you. You just don't feel good with it.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? And especially, how does this decision also influence subsequent decisions that you're making?
Yeah, so the brain is wired to do better.
Yeah,
we extract, we process information, and then in the end we combine it. Then we have these the attributes that we make a choice, right?
Yeah.
But the choice obviously is to either prevent loss, like I said, but most of the time to get a reward.
Yeah.
You choose a chocolate bar or a person. It doesn't really matter. You hope that choice will lead to a positive outcome and a reward. And that if you get that reward, you learn. That's how we were. So if you get a reward, we know, this chocolate bar, this package, I will remember.
Yeah.
Next time, I only see the color in the corner of my eye, and I already want it because it was so rewarding. So that's you should really let the outcome into the decision process. So sometimes I heard that, for instance, recruiters don't even are in the feedback loop of what happened, which sort of kills their way to learn, right?
Yeah.
They don't know what happened after 2 or 5 years, because they just give a person to some department, and then HR takes over.
Yeah.
So let it be a full cycle, right? Where you actually start learning. It's also possible, of course, that you have, like you said, a decision with a very negative outcome.
Yeah.
Hopefully you will learn from it, but to be honest, sometimes you can't, right? Because there was no information. It could also be outside of your scope, or it could just be bad luck or whatever.
Yeah.
The worst thing, of course, is to ruminate or think about all these things that you might have done better when you couldn't have done anything to begin with.
Yeah.
And this post-decisional regret is terrible. It's really a waste of energy. I actually wouldn't really know what to do with it, because I'm terrible at that. I think about choice a lot, and also about what I could have done better. But it helps you to objectify it a bit and see, did I actually have that information? It also doesn't really make sense to learn, if you have that feedback loop, that a person, for instance, didn't perform well after a year, when you had zero information to predict that to begin with. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. So try to be a little bit kind to yourself as well. If you really could have done better, did you have the information?
Yeah.
Often we really didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is really good advice. And I also think it's okay to accept that sometimes decisions don't feel good.
Yeah.
Because from a brain perspective, it's really not that bad for the brain, right? As
No.
we said, it's like in the moment it might feel not so good because the reward system, of course, isn't really active. On the other hand, as you said, our brains are prediction machines. So ultimately we learn from it and our brain will put an emotional marker to it.
Yeah.
So next time we hopefully
Yeah,
do
but
better.
regret can take over, right? And
Okay.
sometimes
Yeah.
it can consume people, and then at some point you just again need others or something to pull you out. It can be people can be completely consumed by their previous choices,
Yeah.
and that is a bad thing, of course.
Yeah.
Again,
that's true.
the advice is pretty simple, just to communicate it. And the more grave, but also the most hard thing we did is to achieve, is to accept that there is no perfect decision to begin with. It's all probabilities, right? We don't like probabilities. What you basically are doing always is what has the highest probability of reward. There are no certainties, never.
Yeah.
But we do not really like those things.
No.
That's also Kahneman, by the way. But
like
if we accept, we like certainty. That's also why we like insurance. There's zero chance that you will lose your money if you get sick, and you can't. That's a nice feeling to have.
Yeah.
But the acceptance that we are really working with chances and probabilities, that is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I feel like, I don't know, I can just talk maybe from my generation, what I see also with all these decisions we have to face, or not decisions, but all these choices we have to face. It can end up in this, I rather not take any decision than doing maybe a false decision or what doesn't feel right.
Indeed.
And then it ends up, you're stuck and you just don't make any decision.
You end up in paralysis. And these kinds of effects are not only in your generation. There's a very famous example. It's even in doctors, physicians. It's a famous experiment where two groups of a group of physicians was basically given the choice. It was a case, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this person. Should this person go to hip replacement or just try to do a painkiller? And then most people say, okay, just try the painkiller first. But then another group was given the choice: should he go for hip replacement, which is surgery, right?
Yeah.
Or ibuprofen or paroxycom, which is two painkillers.
Yeah.
And then that group sent people way more of those physicians sent the persons to surgery right away.
Yeah.
Just to avoid to make another decision.
Oh my
Even if it's between two painkillers. These are doctors, right? Physicians. They are trained to do multi-attribute decision making. This is so it's very human to be bad at it. Yeah. To feel bad about it. Yeah. And to make wrong choices. It's very human.
We're all affected by it. Well, I think, Andries, we're approaching the end of our episode. But of course, no Neurolympics podcast would end without a little cool down, because we want to ease the brain cells into a resting state. So is there one, I mean, you've given a lot of advice, but is there one last really important advice or message that you would like to get out there to our listeners?
Aside from trying to rely more on objective data, which is always good, I think. Yeah. There's something every person can do right away, which is basically what I said earlier, is to choose some topic, even if it's a mundane choice, and do not contemplate that choice at all. Just to do it. just go to a movie and I would go for the ratings because some sort of, but just do it. Just buy things at a glance. Some people are way better at that. A lot of people contemplate a lot.
Yeah.
There are even people on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
And they just browse for 5 minutes and then they turn the TV off. There's no even, you don't even go to the cinema for it. It's just make choices without contemplating, because then there's also another real regret. Don't do it on the very important decisions. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Andries. Thank you for sharing your advice on this whole episode. It was a pleasure again diving into this topic of decision making with you, and thank you for making it also so vivid and practical for our listeners. This was really, really nice, and also
it was a pleasure.
Yeah, and also thank you to the better half of Andries for pointing him towards going into the neuroscience direction. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here and recording this episode. By the way, in case you're wondering why we're on a different background today, we chose for another setting. There was a bit of a miscommunication with our usual setting, but I hope you like this as well. And we would love to hear from you in the comment section. Any questions, insights that you have, any remarks. We would love to engage with you. And also we would love to see you more frequently on the Neurolympics podcast. So please make sure you subscribe to any of our platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. Just head over to www.brainsfirst.com/podcast. You will find all of our accounts and also our social media. So come follow along on Instagram and TikTok to see these, for example, amazing reels that will come out of this episode of Andries dropping some gold here. And yeah, we can't wait for the next to see you next time on the Neurolympics podcast. This will be a solo episode where I'll share a little bit more about decision making. So stay tuned, everyone. Stay happy, stay healthy, and see you next time on the Neurolympics podcast. Ciao, ciao.